Welcome to the Japan Reach Podcast, the podcast where we explore the world of Japan and what makes it such an amazing place. Konnichiwa, everyone, and welcome to another Japan Reach podcast brought to you by Japan Reach, reaching the Japanese people one relationship at a time. The team here at Japan Reach has traveled extensively in Japan and have a lot of experience with Japanese people and Japanese culture. This podcast will explore fun things that we have uncovered during our journeys, and we will bring in guests to talk about their experiences and how they got interested in Japan. I hope you'll enjoy. You probably know that roar. It's the terrifying sound of a famous kaiju. What's a kaiju? When I was growing up before streaming media, we were at the mercy of the over-the-air broadcasts from local TV stations. One of the highlights of my week was a program called Sci-Fi Fung Fu Theater, which aired Saturday mornings. These movies were all of Asian origin and included a mix of either kung fu movies or what I called monster movies. That is where I met some of my favorite childhood friends, Godzilla, Gamera, the Gargantuas, Rodan, and many more giant monsters that wreaked havoc on Japanese cities and towns as citizens, like tiny ants, tried to escape the carnage. The term for these monsters is kaiju, which directly translates to strange beast, and certainly some of these monsters are very strange, to say the least. Although we may think of Godzilla as the first kaiju, the word has a longer life than that. Originally, the term referred to Japan's legendary monsters from folklore, which included dragons and other supernatural animal-like creatures. Often these creatures were malevolent and ghostly and were referred to as yokai, or strange apparitions. One of the most well-known of these is Yamata no Oriko, described as having an 8-forked head. As it crawled, it extended over a space of 8 hills and 8 valleys. Interestingly, modern filmmakers in Japan reached into that legendary past and gave us Yamata no Oriki, his own movie, Oriki, the 8-Headed Dragon, in 1994. Again, we often think of Godzilla as the first kaiju, but the term has been internationalized to a large degree and applied to other giant monsters like King Kong from the movie King Kong, and Raidosaurus from the movie The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, films that were made before the first Godzilla film. Let's get back to kaiju as we understand it in our modern context, starting with the first Godzilla movie, which was made in 1954. For certain, there are a ton of kaiju in what some refer to as the Japanese monsterverse. Each has its own personality, its own motives, and its own unique set of abilities. Certainly you can fit them into a few different categories. The first, benevolent kaiju, represented by monsters like Mothra, an oversized moth, and Gamera, a flying turtle with tusks coming out of his lower jaw. Benevolent kaiju are unashamedly on the side of humanity and actively work against the more destructive kaiju. Gamera, in particular, is a friend of children and often works with children to take on the bad guys and save the world. This doesn't mean that they don't occasionally destroy cities and kill lots of people as they fight for humanity. Godzilla, everyone's favorite monster, falls into this category regularly, but sometimes, depending on the era, not so much. Second, indifferent, non-malicious kaiju. They're often acting on instinct alone and don't have much going on upstairs. They only become a threat when reacting to some sort of human territorial invasion, when they have no alternative but to lash out. It wouldn't be a reach to put creatures like King Kong in this category. If we had just left him to his own devices on Skull Island, he would have been just fine. Third, monsters of vengeance. The best example here is King Ghidorah, a 3-headed monster that was an homage to Yamata no Oriki, minus 6 heads. Depending on the era that it was filmed, King Ghidorah was an extraterrestrial planet-driven wyvern, a genetically engineered monster from the future, a guardian monster of ancient Japan, or a god from another dimension. But most importantly, he was the arch-enemy of Godzilla and a foe of Mothra. I could explore all of these kaiju tropes for a long time, but let's move on and talk about what it takes to make one of these movies come alive. Regardless of their intent, all of the kaiju in the Japanese context, until recently, were played by actors in rubber monster suits. This technique is referred to as suitmation and was very different from the stop-motion animation that was featured in Western monster movies. Those creature suits were often stiff and awkward to move around in, so it was common to film in double speed, which made the movements when played back slower and smoother. For distance shots, they sometimes used puppets to fill out a scene. In order for this to work on screen, movie sets had to be built that looked convincingly like cityscapes that monsters could stomp through and destroy. Some of these cityscapes were masterpieces of art and detail, included small models, including tanks, missile launchers, jet planes, ships, etc., as the humans tried mostly in vain to eliminate the threat posed by the monsters. I am sure that the builders of these movie sets were sad to see the destruction of their often months-long labor, but the result was often a very convincing takedown of humanity, even reminds us to some degree that human beings are quite fragile. If you weren't aware, a recent reboot of Godzilla was released at the end of 2023 called Godzilla -1. Unlike the situation featured in other Godzilla movies, it relied on computer-generated images. This version of Godzilla was more true to the original Godzilla from 1954, as he is a destructive force that radiates rage, along with lots of atomic fallout. So that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed our walk through the world of the kaiju. If you liked this episode, please give us a thumbs up. If you didn't like it or have some other ideas for this podcast, please leave a comment below. See you next time. God bless and Jamata.